All right, we have one more thing to cover here in section 5.2 today. Use survey results to compute conditional probabilities, and that's the last of the formulas. And then we'll review for the rest of the day and take our quiz tomorrow. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump to this last survey. Example 8. Okay, so pause, take a moment to read this and take a look at the table and try to make some sense of the table, and then we'll answer these questions on it. Okay, there's a new conditional probability formula that, let's squeeze in up here. I don't think it's on the previous page, is it? Nope, it's not. So let's just handwrite it in here, okay? So conditional probability formula. And it's the last one in that blue box, too, that we were referencing earlier. Okay, so what the conditional probability formula says, the probability of A given B, so remember that vertical line always means given, that's equal to the probability of A and B on top, all divided by the probability of whatever the given condition is. So it's going to be probability of B. So that's kind of, well, you don't have to memorize it anyways, but just so you know, whatever this given condition is kind of what you put down here. Okay? All right, so we'll be referencing that and using that here for actually only part B. Okay, for this problem, I'm going to make up some my own probability. So I have everything defined here, right? Production worker, Democrat, Republican, Independent. First one I want to find is just the probability of D, Democrat. Okay, so write that down. Probability of Democrat. All right, now this table is organized with these party affiliations or political affiliations, and then they total them up down here. A lot of times there might be a line for the total down here. If you want to separate it like that, then we got the row total over here. Okay. All right, so what's the probability that they were Democrat? Well, remember, you can either pick it up from the table, they put the total down here, 140, or you can pick it up from the paragraph. 140 employees were asked. So out of those 140, 68 claimed to be Democrat. So we just say 68 out of 140. Okay, and then I have the decimal form here. It's 0.486. All right, nothing new there, just got to grab the information out of the table. Okay, part B. This one is going to be new. Probability of being Democrat given their E, which is an executive. Okay. And that's how we read that. If you want to write the words, I mean, maybe that'll help you out. It just means probability. You can, this is optional if you want to write this part. Probability of being Democrat. You see this thing right here, it always means given they are an executive. Okay. All right, so there's two ways we can do this. If they give you a table, it's easier and we can bypass this formula, but I want you to write down both because sometimes it might give you probability in decimal form or just fractions, and then you don't have a table and you have to use the formula. Okay, so given they are executives, all we got to do is look at this table. How many are executives? If I look across at the row total, 48 are executives. And then we take those 48 and break it down by political affiliation, right? The 9, the 34, and the 5 make up the 48. Okay, so that's my denominator. Given they're executive, well, there's only 48 executives. How many of them were Democrat? The table says 5. Okay, which is squeezing the decimal form here. I'm making a line here because I want you guys to try one here in a moment. So that's why I'm creating that space there. Okay, so 5 divided by 48, we end up with about 10% chance, about 0.104. Okay. All right, now here's using the formula. And this is why I want you to know how to use this too, in case they give you not a table and they actually give you the probabilities. So another way is or probability of D given E okay, so following the formula, it says what's the probability of A and B? So probability of Democrat and executive all over the probability of the given condition, if I'm following the formula up there. So probability of E. Okay? So I got to find those probabilities and I got to divide them. What was the probability if I randomly select somebody from this table that they're a Democrat and an executive? That's 5 out of 140. So this is 5 out of 140 on top. And on the bottom, what's the probability of them being just an executive? What's 48? 48 out of 140. Okay, so then I can divide these. I could multiply by the reciprocal and do this by hand. But if I were just to punch in this, close it parentheses, and this, I'm going to get the exact same thing. It's going to be equal to 0.104. Okay, so yes, the table is much easier if they have the table, but what if they only reported these probabilities to you in the paragraph setting? Now you're going to have to know to divide them like that. Okay. All right, let me give you a couple more here to try from reading this table. Let me see. Probability of production worker and Republican. See if you can figure that out from the table. And then let's review yesterday's addition rule. How about the probability of D or E? Okay, pause and try those two probabilities. This one doesn't really have much work. You're just going to find it from the table. This one, you might want to use that general addition rule and show what you're doing. Okay. All right, so the production worker and Republican at the same time. Yep, so how many are production workers and Republican? There they are, 21 out of the 140. So we get 0.15 or 15% chance of that happening. Okay, now when we see the or, these are not mutually exclusive. They could be Democrat and an executive at the same time. So we got to subtract that overlap. So here's the general addition rule. Probability of A plus B minus the probability of A and B. So if we look at the table, Democrats 68 out of 140 plus the executive minus the and. That was the 5 out of 140 we already found in an earlier problem. Okay, so that's going to be 111 out of 140 is the answer in fraction form, or 0.793-ish. Okay. All right, so I've only done one conditional probability formula problem with you so far. I don't think that's enough to give you enough feedback here for a lesson. So what I want you to do is with this space over here, I want you to go to 223, read the directions, read the chart, and answer A through F. Okay, once you read the chart and understand it, they go pretty quick. And you can keep it in fraction form if you want and write your answers right here. Okay, 28A through F. Give you a little push in the right direction on part A. So as we know, especially with the new COVID tests and everything, they're not always 100% reliable, right? So the test results positive in 130 of these cases, but how many were truly, were true? The condition was actually present. Only 110 were accurate, and then 20, that's what we call the false positives. Okay? It was a positive test, but it was false. Okay? All right, so for the part A, to get you going, this reads, what's the probability of a positive given the condition was actually present? So if the given condition is present, this is all I'm looking at right here. The given condition is present. All I'm focusing on this column of 130. So what was the probability that it was positive? 110 out of the 130. Okay, so you don't have to get fancy with the formulas. If they give you the chart, just pay attention to that narrowed down sample space. Okay, and write that down. All right, so go ahead and pause again and try the other ones now that I helped you get it going. Okay, so I'll show you the answers here in just a second, but just to make sure we're clear, when you see the word and, doesn't mean you multiply. That's if you have 2 or 3 events in a row, like the worksheet yesterday. All right, here this is still just one thing. We're just still selecting one. Oops. Sorry about that, pause. This is just one person being selected at random. So a person selected at random, one person. So what's the probability that they had the condition present and positive? Condition present and positive is 1/10 out of the 200. Okay, so that's how we figure that out for E. Okay, so here's the answers. Kind of check yours versus this. I didn't reduce any of these or put them in decimal form. I just kept it in raw form for purposes of the table. Okay. All right, so that was it today, just that last example, and then one feedback problem. We're done with 5.2.